everybody for a prayer before we start. In the name of the Father and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Lord Jesus, we thank you for granting us an opportunity to challenge ourselves, to acquire more knowledge, to develop our skills, and at the same time expand our understanding in family relations and in family law. May everything we learn, Lord, be enable us to use them to help others and to benefit those who are in need of it. And may everything we do, Lord, glorify you. This we pray through Christ our Lord. Amen. Saint John Baptist de la Salle,
Pray for
Pray
us.
for us.
Jesus in our hearts,
Forever.
Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit. All right, sige. Before we head out to any of that, we proceed first with the topic covering Title 4, which is property relations involving ano na siya? Involving individuals and different property regimes. Sige. Miss Smith, Anna,
Yes,
what are
attorney.
property relations involved?
Again, attorney.
What are the different property relations recognized under the family code?
Property relations.
Yes. What are the different property relations or property regimes under the family code?
Um, if they're married, then if without like a prenup or something, all assets are shared.
All assets are shared. So what do you call that? What do you call that property relation?
Like settlements, attorney, settlements.
Settlements. What else?
They have property regime. So along with the like in a marriage, since they share assets, so it's like they have like the property regime and like conjugal partnerships.
So what is the concept of a conjugal partnership?
When we say conjugal partnerships, it's how properties could be acquired and like the gains that each partner in that said marriage could acquire and like produce, but it's still shared. So it's like a common fund and they have still equal rights. Attorney.
All right, sige.
Thank you.
Jacqueline? Sige.
Yes, attorney.
What are the different property regimes ganun?
Absolute community regime, relative community regime, and complete or absolute separation. Attorney.
When you speak of relative community regime, what do you understand by that?
Everything or it wait absolute community regime is that everything that is owned between spouses before they get married are owned in common during after the marriage is the marriage happened, and both the earnings and both properties belongs to them.
How is it different from a community or absolute community?
It is different from absolute community regime, attorney, because the concept of absolute community regime is that the property before two persons get married is theirs, but then the earnings of those properties when they get married, it becomes it goes to both of them. While the relative community regime, both those properties and the earnings belong to them already when they became married.
So is there any qualification for absolute community? When you're talking about absolute community, does it mean everything before and after the marriage shall be owned in common by the spouses?
Again, attorney.
My question is it absolute that before and after the marriage in a absolute community regime, all the property belongs to both of the spouses?
Yes, attorney.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank
Josh,
you.
Warren, Hilado. Josh, ara ka? Ga-discuss lang ta ha. Napamangkot lang ko ah. Kasi basi bala you know
Hello, sir. Sino na Josh, sir?
si Josh Hilado.
Hello, attorney.
Hello, good afternoon.
Attorney.
In a system of absolute community, um, is there a particular thing that needs to be distinguished in terms of what kind of property would belong to the co-ownership of the husband and wife?
Can you repeat the question, attorney?
Sige, I'll modify the question na lang. Sige. What generally constitutes ang community property gani in a absolute community regime?
What constitutes community property, attorney?
Yes.
Just a moment. So community property, attorney, would involve the profits earned by the spouse during the marriage and all the property with those earnings.
Okay. So if that is one of the premise, when does it commence?
Come again, attorney?
When does it commence?
At the start of the marriage.
At the start of the marriage? Is that correct?
Yes, attorney.
What's your basis for that?
Uh, from just a moment. Here, attorney.
Hmm. What's
So,
your basis?
just a moment. So, in the civil code, it states that the absolute community of property between spouses shall commence at the precise moment that the marriage is celebrated.
At the precise moment the marriage is celebrated.
Yes, attorney.
Hmm.
Any stipulation expressed or implied for the commencement of the community regime at any other time shall be void.
Why?
So,
Why do you think so?
come again, attorney.
Why do you think so?
I think it's because it implies that anything that is earned or being brought, especially property and earnings, uh, should be should be managed specifically in the marriage. But anything before the marriage is excluded
Mhm, sige. All
to
right.
avoid any complications.
Thank you.
Thank you, attorney.
Jancel Cordero.
Attorney, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. What should be considered as property excluded from the community property?
I think the exceptions for the exclusions for community property would be property acquired before the marriage or either the spouse was legitimate descendants by a former marriage and is fruit of the income, and property for personal and exclusive use except jewelry, and lastly the property acquired during the marriage by grat- gratuitous title except when the donor, testator, or grantor expressly provides otherwise.
Is that part of the exclusion?
Yes, attorney.
We're still speaking about ano, 'di ba, ng uh, absolute community, right? Jancel,
Yes, attorney.
what's your basis for that? I think you're still reading the civil code. You're not reading the family code. Because if you would look under Article 92, therein lists the properties that can be considered as excluded, except that number 3 is not among those mentioned previously in the civil code. Can you double check?
Yes, attorney. I think the third one would be the property acquired before the marriage by either spouse who has legitimate descendants by a former marriage, and the fruits as well as the income, if any, of such property.
What does that mean? What do you understand by that?
The third one would be that the property acquired before marriage by either spouse who has legitimate descendants by a former marriage, and the fruits is... Sorry, attorney, wala ko balo.
Okay lang. Among the 3, what do you understand there? Na hindi siya dapat mabilong sa community property.
think the second one, attorney. The property for the personal and exclusive use of either
Sige.
spouse.
So what do you understand by personal and exclusive use of a spouse? Do you have an example there? What do you use as a personal and exclusive property? Jansan?
Wait lang, gid, attorney.
No, this is a practical question. Like for you, what items do you use personally and that only you can use it?
For this case, siguro, attorney, it could be my personal belongings, like my jewelry, my phone, or things of the like.
Your phone. O sige, butang tayo your phone. Your phone is your own property. It does not belong to the community, except that if it is a jewelry, right? That's part under 1992. Paragraph 3. Paragraph 2. So you'd understand the application, Jancel?
Yes, attorney. Slide.
Slide.
Yes.
So what forms part of the community property? Your personal and exclusive use. But if it is a jewelry,
It is exempted, attorney.
suli.
I mean, aside sa akong personal use, ang jewelry lang ang hindi considered, attorney, sa exclusions.
Okay. So ang statement would be that everything that you use personally and exclusively belongs to you. Except if it is of a jewelry. Why do you think ng jewelry exempted? Excluded from the exclusion. Oh. Why?
Maybe because it is considered as an asset, attorney.
Asset. So your phone is not an asset. Sige lang. Thank you. Julie May.
Good afternoon, attorney.
Hello, good afternoon. Why do you think jewelry belongs to the community property? Were you following sa conversation naman?
Yes, attorney.
Oh, why do you think?
Because, attorney, pwede mo siya maprinda.
Bawal ang cellphone,
ma-sell.
hindi pwede maprinda?
Ay, kay pwede mo siya, attorney, ma-sell.
Ang jewelry, ang cellphone, ang cellphone pwede mo ma-sell, di ba?
Yes, wait na. Yes, attorney.
So, do you follow what my question is? Nga ang jewelry, ang form part of community property.
Because, attorney, like, ang jewelry, like, saka, iyang quantity over time.
Quantity?
Oo, attorney.
Tos gadamo siya, do bali pagkadas.
Iya, galing nga price, attorney, over time.
Okay. Really good. So may appraisal ang iyang ano na siya gani, ang opposite ng depreciation gani, ano gani?
Appraisal, attorney. I'm not sure.
Appreciation. Ano na ginahimo sa imo kung sa imo ka crush? Yung na-appreciate ka.
Appraise.
Okay? Sige. Now,
Thank you.
I was asking, wala pa, di na eh. Istorya pa taga ni.
Ah,
Dili. Ano yung pag-intindi mo ya sa mga property nga na-acquire during the marriage pero gratuitous title?
can you repeat the question, attorney?
Ano yung pag-intindi mo, Julie, sa number 1 under Article 92 nga gahambal siya nga wala ni siya ga-form sa community property? Ano yang sa pag-intindi mo?
Ang ano ni attorney, gratuitous
Title.
title.
Mm.
Kay inheritance.
Kay inheritance siya. So very good. So kung ging-inherit mo siya, mas ging-inherit mo siya during the time na kasal ka mo, does it form part of the community property?
No, attorney, unless if expressly provided gid siya by the donor nga pwede siya mabutang sa community property.
Okay. What do you think is the reason behind nga hindi siya form sa parts ng marriage niya ano?
Because attorney, it is like ginhatag gid siya sa imo lang for you exclusively, or exclusive properties by or donated by third persons for you lang.
All right, sige. Thank you.
Thank you, attorney.
Okay. Sige. Storyata. Josh, Vincent,
Hello, attorney.
what about properties that are acquired during the marriage? What is the rule
Attorney.
about properties acquired during the marriage?
Both of the spouses own the property if they adopt the property regime that is absolute community property.
So, in instances, when can there be an absolute community as a property regime?
Before they should first settle when they start before they marry, attorney, they must have a marriage settlement, and if they are able to agree on the marriage property regime, and if that property regime is absolute property community property, then it is under that is the regime that they will adopt, unless if they don't actually have a marriage settlement. From what I think, I believe that they would apply the absolute community property with or yeah, if they did not apply for a marriage settlement before the marriage.
Why do you think so?
Is it a practical question, attorney?
Yeah, this is just a conversation.
Okay. I think, attorney, that it has to do something with since well, according to our to this to the civil code, I mean to the family code, attorney, we treat marriage as the base, as the one of the institutions that the state must protect. And I think that in order to protect that institution, we need to make it strong. That is why to make it strong, the properties that are being acquired by the spouses should be owned by them.
Okay. All right. Sige, just a follow-up question. When you're talking about the absolute community, on what instances or what shall it answer to? So where do you charge them? Do you charge them to just name an idea sa nabalaan mo?
Can you please rephrase the question, attorney?
Sige. More or less, this would be answerable by Article 94. where does the absolute community property be applied or answer to the liabilities of the spouses?
I think the spouses are liable for the support of their family, support so this includes their children, support towards both of them, attorney, their debts and their obligations, their taxes, as well as their anti-nuptial debts, um, anti-nuptial debts,
Antinuptial debts are considered what?
um, uh, debts that are that that debts that have been accumulated by a certain spouse, attorney, and then uh,
Timeline. When did he accumulate that debt?
before the marriage, attorney, if it before the marriage, unless that debt benefits the family,
Okay.
and then you also have donations that was being given by the donators, um, and lastly is the expenses of when the expenses of litigation, attorney.
All right.
And
Sige. Thank you. Longest, Fred.
Attorney.
Hello.
Hello, attorney. Good afternoon.
Improve your audio. Kaya doon hindi ka masyado ba yun.
Hello, attorney. Kabatian ako.
Choppy ka, choppy.
Hello. Attorney, kabatian. Hello.
Sige.
Hello.
Hello, ara naman ah.
Okay.
So sa absolute community, sino gani ga-manage sina?
Hello, attorney. Sa absolute, mabatian ko, attorney.
Yes, got you.
Okay, thank you, attorney. Sa absolute community, attorney, ang spouse, ang manage na.
Ang ano?
Ang spouse, attorney, under
Spouse?
sa,
Sino sa spouses?
if sila gidua, attorney.
Hindi pwede ang mas may damo property?
Hindi, attorney, kay once magsulod ka na sa marriage, attorney, and if isa na ang property ni na attorney, then kamo na ang may right sa inyong property.
Okay, what if ang isa dabi ka spouse da nang nabuang siya, kay in love sa simo? Pwede ikaw?
Wait, attorney. If practical lang, attorney, ang inastoryahan sa practical lang ni attorney, no?
Oo,
I think
niya. Bala nyo.
I think, attorney, if mentally incapacitated siya, then I think pwede siya. If ma-prove lang sa court na mentally incapacitated siya, then pwede.
So pwede siya siya ma-manage, siya ma-administer.
Yes.
Pero kung say for instance ibaligya niya ang isa ka property nga ginaon nila. Tapos ang iyang wife is mentally ill. So pwede niya lang na mabaligya?
I think, attorney, hindi.
So paano niya na mabaligya?
Kay hindi na, attorney, mabaligya kay according sa article 98, attorney.
Ano? According to?
Kay according to article 98, attorney, hindi siya hindi
98. Ano number
Yes.
98?
Neither spouse may donate any community property without the consent of the other.
Wala niya man gina-donate, baligya niya man. Kay para ang property gamiton niya, para ang profit sinada i-gasto niya sa pag-treat sa iyang wife.
Wait lang yun, attorney.
Hmm. Sa imo, ano na naintindihan mo?
Um, when it, kung ako attorney, ang pag-intindi ko, if when it comes nga mentally incapacitated siya, pwede siya kay ga-comply lang man siya sa obligation ng family attorney or ga-comply lang siya sa obligation sa spouse si attorney. If ang money nga ginosar lang man sa pagbaligya iya is i-use siya for complying the obligation sa iya family or sa iya spouse.
Okay. So muna.
Attorney.
Alright, sige. Thank you.
Thank you, attorney.
Istorya lang ta. Candace.
Good evening, attorney.
Good evening. Doon nalipat ako sa tsura mo, Candace. Hindi pwede kang pakakita. Doon.
Yeah. Wait lang din, attorney. Hello.
Okay. Naraman lang gali. Sige. So, same question kagina kay Fred. Nang kung ikaw nabuang ka na gid sa pagpalangga kay Fred, sample lang niya, hindi yan ay magano, naga-blush gid yun. Tanda si Fred lang nabuang si mo ah. Siya lang ang sa imo. Te, may property ka mo. Assuming naging kasal ka mo syempre. Te, ang property ibaligya. Kaya para i-treat mo sa iyang psychiatrist or iyang therapy. Do you think that you can dispose that even without the consent of your husband? If you belong to an absolute community?
Again, attorney?
Do you think you can dispose a property by instance that your husband is not within the mental condition that he is supposed to be in?
Yes, attorney. Kung mentally incapacitated ang imo na husband, pwede mo mabaligya ang property nyo kasi sa under Article 96. Wait. In the event that one spouse is incapacitated or otherwise unable to participate in an administration of the common properties, the other spouse may assume sole powers of administration. These powers do not include disposition or encumbrance without authority of the court or written consent of the other spouse. As long as para sa family, attorney, pwede kin.
Okay. So you can dispose that.
Yes.
Do you need to declare that the other party or your spouse is incapacitated?
Again, attorney?
Do you need to declare? Do you need to declare nga si Fred buang?
Kung proven, attorney, na...
Kung proven na si Fred buang. Hindi man. Assuming na lang niya, storya lang niya.
Kung wait lang gid, attorney. Pwede maliwat ang question, attorney.
Buang si Fred. Anong ganyan pamawat ko? Kung buang si Fred, assuming si Fred ang imong mabana, pwede ka kabaligya sa property niyo? Assuming absolute community ang inyong property.
Yes, attorney.
Pwede. Ano kinanglan mo? Baligya ka lang? Kaya ang first question sinada, do you need to declare Fred as incapacitated?
I think yes, attorney.
You need to. And then if you need to declare him,
may authority lang ka court.
Nga yung sulod mo ng court. Nga, why do you think that there should be court authority?
Para i-prove na mentally incapacitated si Fred.
Okay. And so, when he is mentally capacitated, gaging baligyan mo.
You have the right na ibaligya ang property.
So, nagmayo na biyang ulo ni Fred. Tapos nambal niya, aging baligya mo ang amuto nga property. Uy, kakabalo nga patindugan, dapat to rest house ta. Yan, mo na. So, what do you think would happen?
Wait, attorney.
Just to note for everybody, the provision on Article 96 is a very important provision because there's a rich bar questions that springs from this. So be able to know this by heart. Okay, this comes in handy when you will deal with property law and questions regarding validity of contracts under obligations in contract. Sige, go.
Pwede gyapon mo baligya, attorney.
Nga man.
Kay mentally incapacitated siya gyapon. Kay
During the time, sa baligya mo.
I mean, mentally incapacitated. Siya ti pwede mabaligya ang
scenario nag-ayo na siya kunwabi. And then ging contest niya ang pagbaligya. Anong himuon niya?
Wait lang.
Ang sabat ara gyapon sa second paragraph. Dinda dampya sa second paragraph ang sabat.
In the absence of such authority or consent,
Go. In the absence of such authority or consent,
the disposition or encumbrance shall be void. However, the transaction shall be...
First statement, Anay. So kung hindi kakakuha sang consent kag authority, anong effect sang pagbaligya?
Void.
Void. So meaning to say, kung gimbaligya mo siya kay Archel, ang inyong property, ang effect sang inyong kontrata is
Ma-void siya.
Void siya. Oo. Now, ang sabat sa pamangkot, basa.
However, the transaction shall be construed as a continuing offer on the part of the consenting spouse and the third person, and may be perfected as a binding contract upon the acceptance by the other spouse or authorization by the court before the offer is withdrawn by either or both offerors.
Okay. So anong pag-intindi mo?
Wait.
Candice, personal na question. Paano ka man nga magpakasal?
I don't know, attorney.
Ano to yung sabat?
I don't know, attorney. Wala pa.
Wala pa.
Wala.
Pero in the future, pwede.
Depende, goro.
So ano ma-feel mo kung ang imo nga ba naging baligya niya ang imo nga property niyo? Nga kabalo ka nga pwede gitani ang ina nga property retirement home niyo or pabutangan niyo negosyo.
Kung ako naman ang mentally incapacitated.
Wala ko gambay nga mentally incapacitated.
Awa.
Kung ibaligya niya nga wala ka consent.
Ay, again, attorney, liwat-liwat. Pero na-confuse ko, be.
Confused na, hindi ka wala ka kung may plano ka magpakasal sa future.
Tapos?
So kung magplano ka magpakasal sa future, yung baligya sa husband mo ang property niya.
Ah,
Love mo man siya gyapon.
o attorney kung para malang sa amon ng para malang sa pamilya or sa amon nga gihimo yati go eh.
Okay. Sige. Pero hindi man sa iban be. Hindi sila gusto naging baligya. Anong recourse nila?
Eh kung hindi wait. Kung hindi magpasagot ang iba.
Oo. Napaisip ka. Ang sabat ara gyapon sa 96.
In case of disagreement, the husband decision shall prevail, subject to recourse to the court by the wife for the proper remedy, which must be availed of within 5 years from the date of the contract implementing such decision.
So arada. So pwede niya i-contest, pwede niya makadto sa court, kag i-ask niya. Pero may limit lang. It should be within 5 years. Klaro?
Yes, attorney.
Sige naman. Pwede na ka nakapakasal.
Thank you, attorney.
Okay. Alright. Wala, storya man lang niya. Richelin?
Yes, attorney. Yes, attorney.
Kung may pakaslan ka sa classroom nyo, sinong gusto mo pakaslan? For example.
Wala.
Wala.
Naa sa iban nga course.
Sa iban nga court, sa din siya, sa din, sa lain nga section.
Joke lang, attorney.
Hypothetical lang nito, syempre. Kabalo ka mo ginawa sang teacher namon sa una. Mas ginakilig pa ang mga estudyante. Ano. I remember one time, storya gisi lang niya, na we have a very silent type nga classmate. Makot siya. So if you will be married, and it so happens that upon your marriage, you do not provide consent or you did not participate in the sale of the property, what would be your recourse? Pamangkot siya na. Tapos yung pamangkot siya, sino ana yung imong wife? Siyempre ang balon niya, wala siya din may ambal eh. And then eventually, ging pambal siya. Hambal siya ni judge. Choose from your classmates. Siyempre, ging choose niyang crush niya eh. And then from then on, naganahan na siya magsabat sa answer. Ikablo ka answer niya, basta gusto sang wife ko tumanon ko ate, siyempre, wala na. Wala nang law sa iya. Basta in love ka na. Okay, sorry, good. Richelin, ikaw na. So, just an emphasis. You were following an instance wherein ang administration, enjoyment, and disposition sa community property is being done by whom? Sino ganing in charge for that?
Spouses, attorney.
Both of the spouses. Use the language of the law. Both of the spouses.
Okay, sorry, attorney.
Okay. So in an instance wherein the disposition of the property is without court authority or without the consent of one of the parties, what is the effect? What is the effect of the disposition or encumbrance?
Void, attorney.
But if, for instance, subsequently, the one who did not participate gave his or her consent, or the one who made the transaction was able to get a court authorization, will that cure the defect or the effect of the transaction?
Can you repeat the question, attorney?
I repeat the question. So in an instance wherein the spouse who did not participate or did not provide his consent in the sale or the disposition of the property, but eventually would agree and consent, or the one who disposed the property was able to acquire court authority, will that cure the defect?
I think attorney, either spouse may dispose by will of his or her interest in the community property.
Say mo, directly. Will that cure, Makayo?
Yes, attorney.
Why? Why? Practical nga sabat. Why?
Ano, attorney? Sorry, sandali. I think it's stated in Article 96, attorney, I think.
Nga ano? What's in Article 96? Richelin?
Wait. Stated in Article 96 that an attorney, authority of the court and consent from the spouse is needed to dispose.
No, this is more of the reason behind. Why do you think that it will cure? You already answered it. You said nga it will cure the defect. Why? Why do you think so?
Because I think it is an attorney perfected contract.
It is a perfected contract. Sige, balikan tala na. Alright, thank you very much.
Thank you. Sorry, attorney.
Marcela? Panisales, Marcela? Are you there?
Good evening, attorney.
Good evening. Sige, paano mo gani ma-dissolve ang absolute community regime? How do you dissolve this kind of community regime?
If ang imong part ni attorney na dad or may ara ka mo or nag-separate ka mo. And also if na-declare ng null and void yung marriage.
Okay.
According sa Article 99.
Alright. Does it need to be a court-mandated legal separation? Or pwede lang nga ano lang ka mo? Bulagay lang ka mo?
It's again attorney.
Say for instance, nagsaylo lang yung balayang imong husband. Legally separated ka mo physically.
Pero wala sa court attorney. Wala na sa court or like nag-separate.
Wala pa court nga decision.
Hindi pwede attorney. Kasi wala. Again attorney.
So ang pamangkot again, Marcela, is kung nag-separate lang kamo yan physically sa imong husband, will that dissolve or affect the absolute community?
No, attorney. Because nag-marry ka mo, then equal in yung properties. Pero like ma-declare lang na siya nga ma-dissolve if may ara na nga decision ka court.
Okay. Pero ang ina nga instance, is that subject to any exception?
Wait lang.
Actually, the answer is right there in Article 100 na yun. So, by reading Article 100, you would actually state and signify that maski wala pa na desisyonan sang court, kung nag-separate lang kamo physically, pwede gyapon nga ma-dissolve ang absolute community. Kung any of the circumstances mentioned there would be present. Because the general statement is that separation, in fact, amo na siyang physical separation lang, not the legal separation that is decreed by the court, will not be affected. Pero it will be affected if it falls any of the categories that are enumerated in Article 100. Ano gani ang ara sa Article 100 nga circumstance nga maka-affect sa absolute community?
The spouse who leaves the conjugal home or refuses to live therein without just cause shall not have the right to be supported.
Mm-hmm.
And second is when the consent of one spouse to any transaction of the other is required by law, judicial authorization shall be obtained in a summary proceeding.
Mm-hmm.
Third, in the absence of sufficient community property, the separate property of both spouses shall be solidarily liable for the support of the family. The spouse present shall, upon proper petition in a summary proceeding, be given judicial authority to administer and encumber any specific separate property of the other spouse and use the fruits or proceeds thereof to satisfy the latter's share.
Sige, what does that mean?
It refers attorney ng loss of support,
Mm-hmm.
Judicial authorization instead of marital consent, and subsidiary solidarity liability of the separate property.
What do you mean solidary liability?
The liability attorney of one debtor among two or joint debtors to Latin.
Ano gani?
Any one debtor among two or more joint debtors to pay the entire debt if the creditor so chooses attorney.
Okay. So what does that mean? Solidary liability.
It is equivalent to joint and several liability in the common law.
Okay. But what does solidarity mean?
Unity or agreement, I think.
Okay. So in unity and in agreement, what would that implicate under the third circumstance? In the absence of sufficient community property.
Wait, let me. Ng the spouse liable for the support attorney for the family. I'm not sure. Sorry.
The spouse is liable. Nga gani, when are they going to be solidarily liable? When?
If again, attorney.
When are they going to be solidarily liable?
If if uh kung attorney, kung mayara sila agree agreement. Oh my gosh, not sure.
Ano?
If may
If my
sila conjugal nga like property. I'm not sure. Sorry, attorney.
sige. All right. Sige, let's end your discussion, your individual discussion. Sige. Pointers lang ha. Amo lagi din. If you really are serious in trying to study the law, there is no substitute in trying to read the provision of the law. Really. When the assigned reading material is provided to you, you don't really need to read the entire book covering the assigned reading material. The emphasis is that just read the law. And if you do not know how to understand the law, then you read the explanation under the annotations. It will help you. Because if by this instance, nga amo ka mo ni mag-comprehend bala, ang ginapamangkot ko sa inyo, ang sabat, ara lang gid sa provision sang lay. Way na ko gapalayo gani. Why? I tell this in all honesty. Studying will give you the confidence to answer the question. If you have not studied, then definitely you will stall. Definitely you will make any excuse available to you. And that was my basis for me grading you in previous, kaya wala to big assessments ang inyong first recitation. I forgot to mention that. But I'm really telling you this, reading the provision does not, I'm not requiring as tediously that you should go through and enumerate everything. It's just that you need to understand. Oh, simple lang sa pamangkot, ara sa provision mismo sang lay. If you didn't encounter that, definitely you will not be able to answer it right away. If you would not able to uncover that, definitely you would be lost. And sometimes it helps if you have an overactive imagination, because you can actually try to use the scenarios available to you. And actually, it really helps you. Kita nyo, ang iban nagkaladula da yun. Di na tong iban din mga classmate. Hadlok sila nga ma-recitation, or they have their reasons why they're not here. Again, the entire purpose why a reading material is given to you is this: for you to discover it on your own. Gone are the days that you are being supervised and being spoon-fed. Gas-gas na siya nga linya. But it really pays for you to utilize your time to read. I know the temptation is there, 100%, and I could even guarantee nobody really learns out of the module right now or out of the context of studying this on your own. Why? Believe me, this is one of the very old sayings. The easiest promises to break are the ones you make on your own. Promise ko matuon ko subong. Believe it or not, hindi na matabo. Promise ko tapuson ko niya siya. Hindi ginaya matabo. Ma-extend ginaya ma-extend. So it's a life lesson lang. I really want you to approach your study with the law in a mature manner. Number one, the resolution of the answers are based on what is provided for by the law. When ako namangkot sa complication, ang ginapamangkot ko lang ang isang practical. Why do you think that the law is there? In the strict study, why ka na ginapamangkot, anong opinion mo? Hulat ka, gani sabton gila na hulat ka kung mang-injustice ka sa Supreme Court. That's where your opinion will matter. But when you're studying the law, You provide what is being said in the law. You have no opinion about the law. Because if you are going to be a lawyer, you're just going to state what is provided for in the law. You will argue with the law. You will argue what is the law. And that's the whole point. The entire scenario na siya nga ginamba ko siya, what if kasal ka sa amo na? What if these instances would occur? These are building your fundamentals. Okay? I know that gamba kasi second year pa lang kami gani, grabe na ang demand ni Attorney Samuel. It's just that really the quiz, this is a skill. Those who have developed the skill to read early are those the quickest to learn. If you understand the value of reading ahead and then ginahambal sa inyo, try to read and study that without even looking at your notes, you will be able to answer. In all honesty, I rarely glance in the book or the ones that I provided to you as the reading material. Because when I close my eyes, I could still remember the time where I sat, the time where I studied, the time where I tried to comprehend what I was reading. Take that opportunity with you. Why? Because you are full-time students. Mind you, there are those who would love to trade places. If you get to be in a law school, hindi sila ka-focus kay may deadline sila sa obra nila. Hindi sila ka-focus kay dede pa sila sa ilang mga kabataan. Hindi pa sila ka-focus kay may deadline pa sila sa iba nila nga trabaho, iba nga obra. Take that opportunity that you have the time in the world to focus. Focus man lang yun eh. I mean, this is just a practical understanding sa inyo. Wala ko, I'm not mad at anybody here. Hindi ko. I'm really just simply dropping knowledge to you. If you trust my word, understanding the law is very difficult for those who are juggling more than one task. But ikaw, if you get to be fortunate nga you have the resources, your family can send you to a good school, a decent school. Take note, ang ilang obligasyon sa inyo matapos na lang na sila by college. But you need to demonstrate, okay, worthy bala i-invest ko ang akon nga kwarta sa bata kung gusto niyo mag-eskwela law school. Worthy bala sa self ko nga if I proceed in going to law school, I will get a job? Or am I just wasting my time? You can answer that on your own. Why? Because I'm proud to say even sa full cycle, sometimes ang full cycle, I can still recall the knowledge I've learned from my full sci teacher in this subject. Because he was very ute. Kiga niya gid kami niya. Though the medium was very different kay ti ara kami kitanay kami pero. But the same knowledge he dropped from us is the same knowledge I'm telling you. There is no substitute in studying. Read. And sometimes what you read, you know you can apply. Because ang ini nga subject is close to home. It's very close to home. Kamo, parents nyo, they're already within the range of the applications ng inyong family code. Amo na kisa ba si parents yung gani inaway, ako nga property niya way ka na dilabot. Ang balon mas mama mo, absolute community, bilang inyong ownership ni papa. Kigan mo pa siya. Ay ta, amo na. Oo. Basta bilang family code, bika gid basa-basa ma. Focus ba ma? Okay, kigan mo pas nanay mo. Diba? No, but it really is. You know what? It really is for practical sense. I'm just telling you. The law is very beautiful. It's just that sometimes we ignore its application. That's why it's easier to absorb the law if you know when to apply. If you know and you can create scenarios to it. Diba? Say for instance, sige, try ta, try to discuss ang try to discuss ang scenarios. I think you already have read the basic premise under this Article 88, which is the absolute community. Oh, you should know that when is the precise moment should absolute community begin? Commences at the precise moment of the marriage is celebrated. Oh. So you would know, checklist na. Wala na may makadula sa imong mind. If you are being asked, saan mo gani umpisa ang absolute community? Dude, it's at the precise moment of the marriage is celebrated, man. You should know that. That's basic. It's Article 88. Okay? Hindi na siya madula. It's already planted in your mind. You would know already that it's there. Now, other instances, Article 89 is going to tell you about judicial separation of property. No waiver of rights, interest, shares, and effects of absolute community of property during the marriage can be made except in a judicial separation of property. Meaning to say, if you're gonna connect this to the provisions on Article 1 of the Family Code, dapat ubrahon nyo na niya ang pag-separate ng property as a prenuptial agreement pa lang. The only effect pwede during the marriage ngay i-modify mo is when you file judicial separation. All right. Other instances, what constitutes? Actually, ang key word nyo lang ginada is that unless otherwise provided, ang marriage shall be, ang constitution niya is all property owned of the spouses at the time the celebration of the marriage is acquired. So everything that you own, including the clothes, or including the properties that you would own afterwards during your marriage, it belongs to the community property. Tanan ngaging order ni Mrs. mo sa Lazada, sa Shopee, it's commonly owned. Isa ikaw pa nagaro ang gabayan. Tanan man na nga mga piyesa sa salakyan, sa motor or sa bike, it's owned in common. But I need you to look into Article 92. It's going to tell you, excluded. Tatlo lang na sila. Property, which is acquired during the marriage by gratuitous title. Meaning to say, ging-donate na sa imo. Gratuitous title is for gratuity, meaning it's actually given to you by cause and by reason of the generosity of an individual. Will that form sa community property? The answer is no. Why? Because it's a personal thing. Kung nanging generous ang tao, naging hatag niya sa imo, it's a personal thing. Imo na iya. It's actually going to be a constitution of a personal and exclusive use. When a property is donated to you, that is for you. Hindi na yung package deal nga kung mag-donate sa ako, dapat donate ka man sa wife ko. That doesn't follow. But in this instance, excuse me, I'll just have to. All right, I'm in the class. Sige, thank you. Now, personal and exclusive use, they do not belong to the community property. What are personal and exclusive use? You can define it according to the nature of the property. Personal property are those that can belong to an individual by reason of its mobility. Salakyan. Binata ka pa, may salakyan ka na. So, does that mean nga even ikaw na iyang gabayad sang monthly sina nga due sa salakyan, it's also owned by your wife? Yes. Because it's different, Gile. Because it's a personal and exclusive use. So, imagine mo the personal property that you are utilizing that doesn't form part of the community property. The only one that will form part of your personal property are jewelry. Sa panatang ipamangkot sa mystery naman sa una. What about fancy nga jewelry? Jewelry that is fake. Will they form part of the community property? Pinakanami nga sabat, the law does not distinguish whether it is real or not. So long as it is a jewelry, they form part of the community property. Nami man ang sabat sang isa. Mga balang isa, jewelry, fancy jewelry or those that are considered fake is not among those intended or defined to be part of the community property by reason that a jewelry in its value appreciates over time, such as that its appreciated value is an asset for the community property. Acceptable man siya. Depende sa pag-reason out mo. Property acquired before the marriage by either spouse who has legitimate ascendants or descendants to a former marriage. This one is actually forming part under Article 54. Instances wherein if you had a previous marriage and then may bata ka sa previous mga marriage, the law will impose that you will have separate property gid dapat. Why? This is to protect the descendants of your first marriage. That's an imposition under the law. That because you have with you descendants from your previous marriage, you must protect. Hindi mo pag i-commingle, hindi mo pag i-mix from the problem with your new family or marriage. So that's the reason behind that. Right? Property acquired during the marriage is presumed to belong to the community. So anything that you have acquired during the marriage, inyo na yadua. Attorney, what if ang instance bala, this is a problem actually that was asked. Sang sultero ko, gabayad ko ya sa salakyan, sa motor, motor. Tag 2.5 kada bulan. Tapos, ang nagpakasal ko, after 3 months ang nagpakasal ko, dra ko na natapos bayad, hulog-hulugan ang ako ng salakyan. Pamangkot, is that part of the community property? Kaya na-acquire ko na siya sang time kasal na kami? Sige, Hurt, what's your answer?
No, attorney, it's not part of the community property because the time you started paying it is before the marriage settlement.
Okay, sige, that's an answer. That can be an answer. But the concrete answer would be, you go again to the different reasons why it is excluded. And it's already highlighted. That is a personal and exclusive use of a property. Therefore, that does not or it is excluded from the community property. Okay? So please analyze that. I'm giving you the ability to think, at least to analyze the scenario. So again, property acquired during the marriage is presumed to belong. It's a mere presumption which can be overturned because you can prove that. it is excluded from their end. Right? Sige. Nasigonta lang. So these are charges to the property. Absolute community. They're liable for the support. They're liable for payment of debts and obligations, but so long as they are with the consent of the other. All debts and obligations contracted during the marriage by the designated administrator spouse or for the benefit of the community of both or for the consent of the other. Bayad sinada, community of property. Instances, debts and obligations contracted by either spouse, either the spouse with consent or without the consent of the family. This is very critical because if you're going to compare this already to conjugal partnership of gains, ang debts and obligations pwede na iabayaran sa conjugal partnership only if it redounded to the benefit of the family. Ha? So this is among the distinctions that you can actually set. Ang all nga debts, tanan nga obligations, bayaran yun na siya sang absolute community. Whether nag-benefit or hindi. But technically, when you're talking about absolute community, everything that comprises it must belong to it. Payments sa mga taxes and expenses for the preservation of your marriage made during the marriage, even if it is for the separate property of the spouse. Pwede. Expenses, spouse to commence or complete a profession, vocation. Iban din nyo, basi yung patapos nyo, tapos ng college nyo, kasal na kamo. Gusto mo yan mag-proceed sa law or sa medicine or any other vocation. Di nyo kuha ng expenses nyo. You'll treat that part of their community property. Antinuptial debts that are being incurred by the spouse before the marriage, pero nag-redound siya sa benefits ng family. Okay? So those instances, I'll jump through 95. Actually 95, what may be lost during the marriage in any game of chance, betting, sweepstakes, or any other kind of gambling, whether permitted or prohibited by law, shall be borne by the loser. Take note ha. Sabong, loto, ano panada, kung perde ka, imo na iya problema. The loser shall borne the charge, but diri naman adi ang unfair. Kung magdaog kaya, hatag mo na iya sa community property. Dibla? Grabe ka sigurista. And then, as I mentioned, Article 96 is very important. Ha? Because this actually is, again, a rich source of bar questions. All right. So continue to read. I think I've already prepared your quiz for end term. So maybe by Thursday, please read, including sa Title 1. Read as far as you can read with Title 1 already. All right? And then, try ko hingagaw ang grades nyo because I'm still computing for them. Any questions? Questions? La? Sige. So I hope that you continue to read. When I say read, read. Sa halang maski kodal nga provision, kung natamaran ka, insert ko ang mga words nga wala mo na intindihan, i-google lang siya dayon. At least may practical nga application. Right? Because it gets it gets very interesting in a sense nga you'll be able to compare other property regimes. Matapos na ni siyang property regime, just one other meeting, and then we can already jump to the provisions. I was about to mention something. Article 96, in instances, I just really want to emphasize this very, very quickly. I know you have another class. Very, very quickly. When you're talking about in the absence of authority or consent, the disposition or encumbrance shall be considered void. A void contract under the obligations and contract are instances wherein they do not produce any effect. Article 96 is one of the three exceptions that a void contract creates an effect. Okay? Advanced din siya either when you get to read your article obligations and contract. A void contract produces no effect. But here, void ang inyong nga kontrata, but it can still be cured by the reason that there is a continuing offer of the consenting spouse. Meaning to say, kung magpasugot na lang siya, pwede. Valid na siya. I just wanted to emphasize that because there are instances in the family code and in the civil law that provides exceptions to void contracts. Right? So any other questions? Naman, quiz ta sa Thursday. Pwede ta ka quiz or discuss lang ta? Quiz, discuss. Anong gusto nyo?
Discuss it.
Mag-discuss. Magkaliwata. Okay, may iban pa nga wala ka. Discuss, no? May iban pa nga wala ka hambal. O, sige, discuss ta Wednesday. Sure? Okay. Alright, leave Jesus in our hearts.
Forever.
Okay, goodbye. Ingat.
Goodbye,
Thank you and
attorney.
goodbye, attorney.
Nice.
Bye.
Thank you, attorney.
Julie, lakat na.